The Laughing Council. The Chamber of Concordance had not echoed with laughter in nearly 3,000 years. It was not built for it. The chamber was a sphere of black stone and light, suspended at the heart of an artificial star. Gravity was perfectly balanced, temperature flawlessly regulated, and the air composition altered moment by moment to accommodate the physiology of the 37 species seated upon their floating thrones. The Galactic Council prided itself on calm deliberation, on voices measured across centuries, on decisions that shaped epochs rather than moments. Yet laughter rippled through the chamber now. Sharp, clicking sounds, resonant hums, bursts of bioluminescent flicker. All because of one word. Humans. High Counselor Threxial of the Vorn Dominion leaned forward, chitinous fingers steepled. His compound eyes reflected the hovering hologram at the chamber's center, a rotating image of a small yellow star, a handful of planets, and a web of red markings that denoted former territorial claims. "Let the record show," Threxial said, his translator smoothing the rasp from his voice, "that the species known as Homo sapiens has ceased all diplomatic transmission for 47 standard cycles." A ripple of approval followed. "Typical," murmured Counselor Seluvier of the LYR Accord. "Short-lived species burn brightly, then vanish." The hologram shifted, displaying data streams. Human fleet losses, collapsed colonies, shattered orbital stations. The numbers were precise, merciless, and final. Humanity had challenged the Council's economic mandates. Humanity had refused to cede mining rights along the Perseus Drift. Humanity had believed, briefly, that conviction could compensate for inexperience. They had been corrected. Opposition fleets neutralized, Threxial continued. Industrial capacity reduced below recovery threshold. Population centers fragmented. No formal surrender, but no resistance either. "Extinct in all but name," someone said. The laughter returned, restrained but unmistakable. Only one figure did not join it. Archivist Tlorin hovered at the chamber's periphery, its translucent form shimmering with stored memory. The archivists were not a voting species. They were historians, observers bound by ancient compact to speak only when patterns demanded warning. Tlorin's voice was soft when it finally emerged. "Counselors," it said, "there is an anomaly." The laughter died, not out of respect, but irritation. "Explain," Threxial said. Tlorin gestured, and the hologram altered again, not to battles or losses, but to timelines. Lines stretched backward across millennia, converging on a single point labeled humanity. "You classify humans as defeated," Tlorin said. "Yet their historical response to defeat does not align with your conclusion." Seluvier flicked a tendril dismissively. "They lack the resources to recover. They lack the lifespan to matter," added another. Tlorin did not argue. It never did. Instead, it displayed images, primitive, grainy recordings from humanity's early history. Predators stalked across ancient plains. Humans followed, not faster, not stronger, but unrelenting. Days passed, then weeks. The predators collapsed. The image changed. A disease ravaged human populations. Generations suffered. Humanity adapted, survived, eliminated it. Another shift. Wars, ideologies, empires that span continents. All gone. And yet, they pursue, Tlorin said. Not swiftly, not efficiently, but completely. Threxial's mandibles clicked in amusement. "You compare galactic politics to primitive hunting?" "I compare outcomes," Tlorin replied. The archivist highlighted a final data point. Human military doctrine, partially recovered from destroyed archives. Engagement duration, undefined. Objective, inevitability. Silence followed. Brief, uncomfortable. Then the chamber erupted again. "Poetry," scoffed Counselor Jalek of the Avar Syndicate. "They are gone. Let myths comfort the extinct." Threxial nodded. "Let the record show the warning was heard and dismissed." Tlorin's light dimmed slightly. "There is one more factor," it said. Threxial sighed. "Speak, archivist. Quickly." "Humans have not attempted retaliation," Tlorin said. "They have not sought alliances. They have not broadcast rage or grief. So, Seluvier asked. In every recorded instance, Tlorin replied, this precedes pursuit. A new alert chimed through the chamber, soft, administrative. A minor trade relay on the council's outer edge had failed. No debris, no distress call. Coincidence, Threxiel said immediately. Pirates, perhaps. Of course, Seluvier agreed. Tlorin watched the alert fade. Humans never stop pursuing, it said quietly. Threxiel rose, signaling adjournment. Then let them pursue ghosts. The council has more pressing matters. As the chamber dimmed and counselors departed, the hologram of human space remained spinning, silent, dark, and deceptively empty. Far beyond its edge, something moved, and for the first time in centuries, the archivist added a personal note to the record. Mockery precedes regret. Always. The long pursuit. Human space was declared dead. To the Galactic Council's analysts, the maps were conclusive. Trade lanes collapsed, shipyards silent, colonies reduced to scattered habitats barely worth a census update. The few automated probes that ventured across former human territory returned nothing but static, drifting wreckage, and radiation ghosts from old battles. No organized signals. No fleet movements. No protests. Extinction by attrition. What the Council did not understand, what it had never learned to look for, was absence with intent. Humanity had not vanished. It had unfolded. The first pursuit fleet departed Sol without ceremony. No banners, no speeches, just coordinates uploaded, sealed orders distributed, and a quiet understanding shared across generations. They called it continuation doctrine. The mission would not end with those who began it. Children would inherit it. If necessary, grandchildren would finish it. There would be no retreat, because there would be nowhere to retreat to. Human fleets became nomadic by design. Modular hulls replaced planet-side infrastructure. Manufacturing was internalized, powered by recycled mass and captured energy. Ships were no longer symbols of sovereignty. They were ecosystems. Every vessel carried farms, classrooms, and archives alongside weapon bays. They did not defend territory. They followed trails. Each human fleet was assigned not a region, but a target lineage. The species, corporations, and council blocks that had authorized humanity's collapse. Their movement patterns were slow, deliberate, and maddeningly irregular. They crossed unimportant systems. They waited decades at gravitational crossroads. They studied. Human analysts built models not measured in years, but in lifespans. They tracked political succession, resource depletion curves, cultural fault lines. They learned how their enemies thought of time, how they assumed problems expired when ignored long enough. That assumption became the opening. The first disappearance went unnoticed. A logistics convoy belonging to the Avar Syndicate failed to arrive at its destination. No distress beacon triggered. No debris field detected. The loss was logged as a navigational anomaly and written off as a rounding error in quarterly projections. Then another. Then a communications hub blinked offline along a secondary trade spur. Engineers blamed outdated infrastructure. Maintenance crews were dispatched. They never arrived. Across council space, small inconveniences accumulated like dust. Fuel shortages. Delayed elections due to missing data. Medical shortages traced to suppliers that no longer existed. Still, no alarms were raised. The council did not fear what could not be named. Humans ensured it remained that way. When they struck, it was never with spectacle. Human ships emerged from deep space vectors, operating at energy levels barely distinguishable from background radiation. They used kinetic strikes, cyber infiltration, and precision sabotage, methods designed not to destroy, but to erase function. A human commander once summarized the philosophy in a private log. If they know it was us, we acted too loudly. Decades passed. On a forgotten moon orbiting a gas giant, a human child listened to a recorded lesson as her parents recalibrated sensor arrays. "Why don't we just attack them?" she asked. Her instructor, a veteran born long after Earth's fall, considered the question. "Because fear fades," he said. But absence changes behavior. The first undeniable sign arrived nearly a century after humanity's supposed extinction. A council monitoring array intercepted a narrowband transmission, ancient by modern standards, broadcast at a frequency no one used anymore. The signal repeated once every 13 hours. It contained no threat, no demands, only a timestamp and a phrase translated into dozens of council languages. "We are still coming." Panic rippled through lower assemblies. Emergency sessions were called. Analysts scrambled to trace the signal's origin, but it led nowhere, its source masked behind gravitational noise and decoy echoes. The council officially dismissed it as psychological warfare. Unverified, likely fabricated. Privately, long-lived species began to feel something unfamiliar. Uncertainty. More systems failed. Not core worlds, never the core. Humans avoided drawing attention. Instead, they dismantled redundancy, step by step. Where council species relied on interdependence, humans introduced isolation. Where supply chains once spanned sectors, they now broke into fragile local loops. The galaxy did not burn. It thinned. By the time the council convened an emergency review, trade projections had collapsed across multiple regions. Several member species faced long-term regression, their technological baselines slipping for the first time in recorded history. Archivist Tlorin presented the findings without embellishment. "This is not war," it said. "It is pursuit." Threxiel's mandibles were still. "Where are they?" he demanded. Tlorin's response was immediate. "Everywhere you are not looking," it said, "and exactly where you will need them to stop." For the first time since the council's founding, the chamber was silent, not with deliberation, but with the dawning realization of a mistake made far too early. And somewhere in the dark between stars, human fleets adjusted their course, patient, methodical, and utterly certain that time was on their side. The price of mockery. Fear did not arrive in the galaxy like an explosion. It seeped. The first species to understand this were not warriors or counselors, but logisticians. Trade forecasts that had once projected centuries of stability began to fracture into contradictions. Supply nodes reported normal intake and inexplicable absence. Entire production chains failed without sabotage ever being detected. No wreckage, no ransom demands, just silence where certainty used to be. The council convened again, this time without ceremony. Threxiel of the Vorn Dominion studied the chamber's central display as if staring long enough might make the data confess. 14 member species were now in what analysts carefully labeled irreversible decline. Not extinction, nothing so dramatic. Regression, loss of interstellar capability, shrinking spheres of influence. "We are being bled," Selouvier said, her bioluminescent patterns dim with stress. "And we do not know where the wounds are." "We know," Archivist Tlorin replied. "You simply do not wish to name it." Threxiel did not object this time. Reports followed, fragmented, unsettling. A frontier defense fleet had engaged an unidentified vessel. The ship did not flee. It did not advance. It simply matched velocity, staying just outside weapons range, broadcasting nothing. After 12 hours, the fleet withdrew. 3 days later, their navigation systems failed simultaneously. Another account came from a research habitat whose power grid collapsed in cascading failure. Survivors swore they saw a vessel silhouetted against the stars. Angular, scarred, ancient, watching. Always watching. The council finally authorized direct capture. It happened near a binary system at the edge of mapped space. A human ship, smaller than expected, allowed itself to be cornered. Its hull bore no markings, no active weapons. When boarding teams breached it, they found no resistance. The crew surrendered calmly. The human commander was older than anticipated, gray-haired, skin-lined with decades, lived in low gravity. He wore no rank insignia. When brought before the council's emergency tribunal, he stood without restraints. Threxiel leaned forward. "You are conducting unauthorized acts of war against the concordance." The human tilted his head. "We're not at war. The chamber stirred. Then what do you call this? Saluvier demanded. Continuation, the humans said. You ended something. We're finishing it. Plorin observed silently, recording every word. You hide, Phyrexial accused. You strike without honor. The human smiled, not cruelly, but with something like tired patience. You think war is an event, he said. Declarations, battles, victories. We learned a long time ago it's a condition. One you live in until it stops. And when does it stop? Saluvier asked. When the cause is gone. Negotiators were summoned. Offers drafted. Reparations discussed. Mining rights, apologies, even formal acknowledgement of wrongdoing. For the first time, the council spoke the word mistake aloud. The human listened, then shook his head. Too late, he said simply. What do you want? Phyrexial demanded. Nothing, the human replied. That's the point. The commander was returned to his ship. The vessel was released under heavy escort. It vanished within an hour, slipping through a gravity shadow that should not have allowed transit. The message arrived the next cycle, broadcast across every council frequency. Impossible to block or trace. Pursuit continues. Panic spread openly now. Member species attempted to fortify borders, to consolidate fleets, to bring the war into a shape they understood. Humans refused to oblige. They avoided decisive engagements. When confronted, they withdrew, only to return decades later, when defenses had rusted and vigilance had dulled. Council historians dug desperately into humanity's past, searching for precedent. They found it in uncomfortable abundance. Humans had hunted predators to extinction not with speed, but endurance. They had outlasted famines by planning generations ahead. They had fought wars that spanned centuries of ideology, passing purpose like inheritance. The realization struck with horrifying clarity. Humanity did not seek revenge. Revenge ended. This did not. As systems fell further into isolation, council authority unraveled. Species withdrew from concordance obligations, hoarding what resources remained. Alliances fractured under pressure. The council itself began to starve, not of food but relevance. In a private archive entry, Plorin recorded a final assessment. The warning was accurate. Humans never stopped pursuing, not out of hatred, but because stopping would mean admitting the loss was acceptable. The galaxy had mocked the warning. Now it was learning the price, paid not in fire and blood, but in the slow, inescapable realization that the hunters would outlast the hunt. And they always did, until regret came too late. The Galactic Council did not fall in flames. It fell in isolation. The Concordance Citadel still orbited its artificial star, its shields intact, its chambers pristine. Yet one by one, the jump corridors that fed it collapsed. Not explosively, not dramatically, but permanently. Gravitational distortions locked routes into unusable spirals. Navigation beacons returned contradictory data. Couriers failed to arrive. The Council remained alive. It was simply no longer connected. Phyrexial stood alone in the chamber for the first time since his ascension. Of the 37 species that once debated beneath the Blackstone Dome, fewer than half still maintained representation. Others had withdrawn, regressed, or vanished in a local survival. The Concordance existed now mostly as a memory with walls. Archivist Plorin hovered near the central dais, its glow subdued. This configuration was inevitable, it said. Phyrexial did not respond immediately. When he did, his voice carried no authority, only exhaustion. They could have destroyed us, he said. Why didn't they? Plorin answered without hesitation. Because destruction ends stories. Humans prefer conclusions. The first human fleet appeared without warning. No alarm sounded. No defensive protocols triggered. The ships emerged already inside the Citadel's defensive perimeter, positioned with mathematical precision. Never close enough to provoke panic. Never far enough to ignore. They were not numerous. That was the most terrifying part. A transmission request appeared on every surface simultaneously. Phyrexial accepted it. The image that resolved was not a warlord or a conqueror. It was a human, older, calm, seated in a plain command chair. Behind them, the bridge was functional, Warren lived in. This was not a victory parade. This is the Galactic Council, Threxiel said, out of habit. The human nodded. We know. You stand in violation of. No. The human interrupted gently. We stand at the end. Silence stretched. You were warned. The human continued. Not threatened. Warned. You laughed because you thought pursuit required rage. The image shifted. Historical footage appeared, council debates, dismissive gestures, recorded laughter. You mistook quiet for weakness, the humans said. We were simply planning. Seluvier's seat was empty. So were many others. What do you want? Threxiel asked, though he already understood the futility of the question. We want this to be remembered correctly, the human replied. Across the citadel, systems began to shut down, not catastrophically but selectively. Long-range communication arrays went dark. Archive redundancies wiped themselves clean. The council's accumulated laws, treaties, and precedents, thousands of years of authority, collapsed into partial fragments. You are erasing us, Threxiel said. No, the human corrected. We're making you small. The fleets did not fire. Instead, automated human constructs deployed across council space, enforcing limits. Jump capability restricted. Industrial output capped. Military production throttled by unseen constraints embedded deep within infrastructure. Species were not exterminated. They were contained. You will survive, the humans said. You will trade locally, govern locally, argue locally, but you will never again decide the fate of others from a distance. Threxiel's mandibles trembled. And humanity? The human smiled, not triumphantly, but with finality. We'll be around, they said. Watching. That's what pursuit looks like at the end. The transmission ended. Human fleets did not linger. One by one, they slipped away, dissolving into the dark between stars. No occupation, no empire, no claim, just absence, this time intentional. Days later, in a powerless chamber lit only by emergency glow, Threxiel recorded the final council entry. We believed power was the ability to end others quickly. We were wrong. Power is the ability to wait until resistance becomes irrelevant. Archivist Florence sealed the record and added its own closing annotation. Humanity did not conquer the galaxy. It taught a lesson in patience. Far beyond the former reach of the Concordance, human fleets continued their slow migration. Schools in their corridors, names etched into hulls by generations yet unborn. They had not stopped pursuing. They had simply reached the point where nothing remained worth chasing. And the galaxy, diminished and wiser, would never forget why.